So, over the course of the Gaza conflict that we've seen, one of the big discourses that's been going on is what I've been discussing about the very clear violation of international law in the forced transfer of Gazans from the north to the south. This was being told to us as they believed that North Gaza was the operational headquarters of Hamas and that they needed North Gazans to flee the area so that they wouldn't die in the crossfire. They wouldn't be caught in the crossfire, which has led to the scenes that we've seen of large groups of Palestinians fleeing from the north in these so-called 4-hour humanitarian pauses for them to vacate the area. Now, this is forced transfer. This is against international law. We've not discussed this for quite a while, but that's not changed in terms of an international law violation. And we know on the left, we've known for all the entirety of this period, given everything that's been said by Likud and the Israeli government and Netanyahu and all of his cronies, this was a clear desire for them to clear the area in anticipation of being able to annex it at the end of the conflict. This was the start of the second Nakba, right? The people fleeing on foot, on donkeys, because they can't afford cars, from North Gaza to South Gaza. And this was deliberately done. Deliberately done. It's why there was a large exclusion zone and specifically an area that would be easiest for them to annex. And everybody who's been trying to claim that there was no territorial gains that were being eyed up by Israel, giving the statements that they've made about the Palestinians needing to lose land, of Netanyahu's desire for a greater Israel, and for the belief in Israel from being from the river to the sea, entirely being Israel, right? That has been the explicit position. And if you didn't realize this up to this point, then you're just completely delusional or ignorant or willfully ignorant, specifically. And of course, as 8DX Man points out, they kept bombing south anyway. They kept bombing Khan Yunis and Rafah, even after creating the exclusion zone, killing people not only in their houses, but also in the people driving down the road to get from North Gaza to South Gaza as well. So all of it has been a massive red herring from the beginning. Now, they gave us loads of evidence for this. They showed us this complex underneath Al-Shifa with their very high-tech mock-up of what they believed for the Hamas base underneath the Al-Shifa hospital. They have placed an Israeli flag, like a conqueror would, planting the Israeli flag on top of Al-Shifa hospital, like the communist flag on top of the Reichstag, no less, right? That's what it looks like to claim it as territory. We had the person tweet out them getting to the beaches of Gaza City and saying this is now Israeli territory, we're back in our homeland where we belong. They keep saying the quiet part out loud. The Israeli media keep saying the quiet part out loud when speaking with Israeli politicians, right? They create a sanitized version of this to the European and Western press, and then when it's actually happening in Israel, they're very, very open about their desires for annexation, very, very open about the fact that what they want to actually have is full annexation of Gaza as a territory, whether just the north or whether the south as well. But there has been an update on this Hamas base under Al-Shifa, which we've still seen no evidence of, despite them being in Al-Shifa for an entire bloody day, right? No evidence that there's a Hamas base underneath. No evidence whatsoever. They've now said, oh, actually, we got it wrong. We got it wrong. Actually, in fact, it turns out that the military base might actually be in South Gaza. Now, not only did the forced transfer plan make no sense in the first place, because one of their main claims as to why they have to move people out is because Hamas uses human shields. So that if you ever attack any Hamas targets, you'll inevitably kill civilians. So if they flee to the south, they'll then be safe. That's why they wanted them out of there. Definitely not for annexation. No siree. And then my point, I made this point when the very day the exclusion zone policy was announced, right? Anybody who had been watching my stream knows the very first thing that I said when they said about the exclusion zone and the forced transfer of people from the north to the south, the very first thing I said was, well, Hamas are just going to move with the civilians. If you genuinely believe that they use human shields, they're going to move south as the civilians do, and you'll just have to start attacking the south anyway. And they did bomb the south, but now they're saying that people have to flee Khan Yunis as well. So the only city that will be left in Palestine, in Gaza specifically, where Gazans will be able to live in and flee to is Rafah, which is already full. Where are they going to move to? And the answer is, of course, it's going to be the Sinai. They're going to create a second Nakba, even more so, right? It's obvious. Avi Dichter on Israeli TV literally said they're going to create a second Nakba. Not only have all the rhetoric they've been talking about human animals, about people losing land, about the desire for a greater Israel, they've explicitly used the word Nakba. Settlers will post the coming of the second Nakba in little pamphlets that they'll post through the letterboxes of Palestinians in the West Bank. It's been their obvious plan from the start, and Western idiots, Western media and political idiots, have just taken them at their word because they're morons who don't understand and haven't bothered researching the conflict or actually listening to what these people say when they think that Westerners are not listening. It's been the obvious from the start, right? So here we go. Israel now believes that several Hamas leaders have moved south, with some in Khan Yunis, the largest city in South Gaza, according to several Western officials. Some of Israel's allies have asked it to be cautious in its operations in the south, where nearly 1 million Palestinians have fled. Now, first of all, we are seeing strikes in the south, and second, operations in Khan Yunis can be incredibly difficult. The Western officials said the scale and intensity of Israel's growing ground invasion has caused concerns, despite consistent support for the country's right to defend itself, which, of course, is entirely what they have a right to defend itself was what's supposed to cover up. That none of these things are within international law. All of these things are to illegally annex Gaza and to ethnically cleanse the Palestinian population from that area and from their homes, right? But you just say Israel has a right to defend itself, and then you can immediately gloss over all of it. And the thing is, what's crazy is the fact that you're right, Jim Speak. For a very, very long time, the Israeli right said that the first Nakba never happened, and they lied, even though the new historians have proven that it definitely did happen. But now they gleefully accept that it did, and it was just a good thing, and they're happy to do it again. The Israeli far right does, in government. They're very happy to admit it yet again. And they know, because people just keep saying Israel has a right to defend itself, and all of this annexation will just happen accidentally, and they're like, oh, whoops, guess this is our territory now. We never intended to. We kept telling you we weren't intending to. It just magically happened out of nowhere because the base was in Al-Shifa, and then it was in Khan Yunis, and then whoops, Gaza's been annexed. I'm incredulous, absolutely incredulous at just how completely idiotic our political media class is, that they've not even bothered researching this to begin with. I'm so glad that Novara exists, that's been able to unpack this stuff, and people like Owen Jones as well, to be able to actually see the reality of what's been planned and what's obvious that was their goal from the start, right? This is what Ehud Olmert said. But apparently, actually, despite, all of Shin Bet's continual excellent analysis of the Gaza Strip and their knowledge and intelligence about the Gaza Metro as well, and what they knew was definitely a Hamas base underneath Al-Shifa Hospital, most advanced military intelligence gathering service in the world, Shin Bet is, I'll have you know, right? Apparently, we would have made a mistake. Actually, turns out it's not in Al-Shifa after all. Actually, the Hamas command center is in the Gaza Strip in Khan Yunis, when in fact, actually, the one in Al-Shifa is the command node. Oh, I guess we have to invade Khan Yunis now. They have leadership they are hiding, they have bunkers, they have the commander positions, they have launching pads. He said the world needs patience with Israel to be allowed to fully destroy Hamas, and obviously all of Palestine, and the operation isn't even close to being complete. I wonder what the CIA, and by extension President Biden, has to say about this. They were so convinced their intel about Hamas being in Al-Shifa was accurate that Biden blew off reporters asking for the evidence. Exactly. They literally were so sure that their evidence was correct. They didn't even bother answering questions, and now, apparently all the intelligence that even Shin Bet had is wrong. If anybody needs any assurances that we are looking at a second Nakba and a desire for annexation, this is a clip from Mehdi Hassan interviewing Mark Regev. Let's listen.
Well, I'll give you one very straightforward last yes or no question for you. Joe Biden wants a two-state solution in the Middle East. He wants it sooner rather than later, he says, to get peace in the Middle East. Does your government, does Prime Minister Netanyahu support a two-state solution? Yes or no?
I think it's a time now for war. It's a time for victory. And when that's over, with Hamas defeated, with Hamas destroyed, when you've taken out the most extreme enemy of peace, that'll create room, I think, for more moderate and pragmatic voices to fill the vacuum, and that'll be good for peace.
He won't even say he supports the bad option, which is the two-state solution, right? He won't even support the most basic of peace agreements. He says once there is victory in the war, we'll see what moderate voices emerge. That, chat, Viewers, my friends, is code for we will annex Gaza. That's what he's saying. That's clearly what he is implying by refusing to answer the question of a two-state solution, because they want to annex Gaza and they want to keep the continual West Bank only ever as occupied territory without a real state for themselves. It's so obvious. Again, you have to actually be fully not right in the head to see and read and hear the things that they say and things that they do and the stories that change and the lies that get told and the mistruths that get spread and the propaganda that they feed out, to not actually look at this and think this is a second Nakba. Because it is. That's all that it is. Just magically realize, well, actually, no, the command center's actually down south now. All you've got to flee into the Sinai. Or into Rafah, I guess. But, we already know that Gaza is running out of food. There basically is no bread left in Gaza, it's been reported today. How are they going to feed everybody in Rafah? Is Gaza just going to be Rafah and then the refugee camps in the South Gaza area? Is it going to turn into an L shape around Khan Yunis, with all of Khan Yunis and anywhere north of that just flattened or Israeli territory? I don't know. It's so depressing, but we have allowed this. Our politicians have allowed this, and the world should never forgive us.